This is a part of the web design process which probably appeals to most designers, most artistic people, because this is where you're actually creating the look and feel of the website. And I'm using a image editor like Photoshop to create the look and feel because I don't want to have to be worrying about programming and coding to interfere with my creative processes. I'm kind of wanting my right side of my brain to kind of take over. And so using an image editing program, and you can use Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, um, a piece of paper. If you're a graphic artist, you could sketch out your design if you want to. But ultimately, this is what I'm going to be showing the client first. This doesn't have any working links at all. It's just a flat image. I call it a comp that I send to the client, and they can preview this and say, "Oh, this I love this design. Let's go with it." Or they could say, "Well, I'm not too happy with the colors," or whatever. This way, I can tweak things, I can change things. I don't have to worry about the coding of things, which is a real time saver. So this is going to be the Photoshop process of which I'm going to create the look and feel and layout of my web design. Now, you can open up the download file that I provided here. It's called browserdesktop.psd. Now, what this does is it has a blank browser window. You can see I have a Chrome frame. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be designing in this area. So you can build your design on this file. Now, for good practices, what I'm going to do automatically is I'm just going to choose File, Save As. I'm just going to change the name of this to My Site Layout. And I can actually put a space in there because this is not web. This isn't going on the web. .psd. And I'm just going to save this into my site, and I'll create a new folder called uh, raw files. I'll just call it raw and save that there to my site layout.psd. Now, everything that I do, every step that I take, I'm going to create a new layer. So the first palette that you want to make sure is open is your layers palette. That's Windows, layers. Make sure that's open. You could double click the background and call that the browser window. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is create a new layer, layer 1, and we'll call that body BG for body background. Now, I'm going to select the background browser window again because what I want to do is I'm going to select this white area because I want to fill it with that gray that I have in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color pick this gray background with my eyedropper tool. Just click that gray background, and you'll have that gray. Now this is obviously, since you don't have this Photoshop file, this is just a gray that you're going to pick yourself. Now, what I'm going to do, once I've got that gray picked, I've got the browser window layer selected, I'm going to choose my magic wand tool. That is the fourth tool down. You might see a quick selection tool instead, but choose the magic wand tool. Select inside that browser window. If you have contiguous checked here, then you will only select this area. If you don't have contiguous, then you might be selecting more. So make sure contiguous is checked. Click back on the body BG area and then do edit, fill, foreground color, or what I prefer is just option delete or alt delete for Windows. And that will automatically fill that with your foreground color. Choose Command D to deselect, Command D to deselect. Create a new layer. Now for this tool, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create the actual content area layout. That's this rounded rectangle here. And the tool that I'm going to use for this, you can use a select tool, but the tool that I'm going to use is down here are the vector tools, rounded rectangle tools. If you choose one of these If you don't see rounded rectangle, you should see a rectangle tool or the line tool. I think the line tool is up by default. So make sure you click and hold and choose the rounded rectangle tool. And what I'm going to do is, of all the shape, path, pixels, I'm going to choose pixels. The reason for that is that's a simple fill, and what I'm going to fill it in with is the most predominant color, which is this turquoise color. It's the light turquoise. So I'm going to choose my eyedropper tool and choose the light turquoise, so that is now my foreground color. I'm going to pull my thing back. So my foreground color is the light turquoise, and then I'm going to sort of eyeball it. I've got this fortunately as a guide, but you can just eyeball this and just click and drag this across the rounded rectangle tool. By the way, you notice these little black box here with the cursor right next to the cursor. That will tell you how wide this is, and I'm using 950 pixels. So that's my website's going to be 950 pixels based on that value that I'm choosing right now. So this is when I actually choose the value, and as you can see, this is now created the shape. I'm gonna Command Z that because I would rather have a larger radius, so I'm going to choose the radius to be 10 pixels. And I'm just going to, again, draw that out to 950. Remember, that's 950. I'm behind the layers palette there. 950, and I'm just going to pull it down to where it's equidistant from the bottom. 950. And the top of the browser. I'm a little off window, but I'll show you in just a second once I let go. So there we go, 950. As you can see, this is, I'll try to get that all the way in the browser here. Now, if you notice, I'm pulling, because I have this on a separate layer, you see I can move this around, and you can kind of eyeball it to be kind of in the center of your frame here. And I'm just going to call this content. I'm going to do HTML5 terms, and I'm going to call this section background, or section BG. Now everything else that I create, the next part that I'm going to create is the header, and I'm going to base it off of this entire section here. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a new layer. Again, click on the new layer icon there, and I'm going to call this header. And to select the header, what I like to do with this is I like to select the area is going to be contained within the section BG. So I'm going to Command click that area, and that selects that section BG area. But as you can see, the header layer is selected. And what I'm going to do in this process, I'm going to delete up to where I want the header to be. So I'm going to click my rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to hold the Option key down. I'm going to click on the lower right hand corner, and I'm just going to click and drag up to the upper left hand corner to about that place. And again, I'm just eyeballing that to select the header area there. And then I'm going to color pick this brown color. And again, you can use your own colors for this. I'm just using a pre-selected set of colors, so you can use your own color palette here. And I'm going to Option delete that to fill in that brown color. Now, one thing I should probably be doing right off the bat is you see how I have this drop shadow in here? I should be applying that drop shadow, and the way to do that, there are many ways to do a drop shadow, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this section BG and I'm going to click and drag it down to the new layer icon, if I click and drag it down there, you'll see that it automatically copies the layer with the same color information and everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to name this shadow. And what you're going to see here, again, I'm going to command select the thumbnail area, and by doing that I will select that whole area, and I'm going to do edit, fill, and I'm going to say black. As you can see, it's below the header line but above the section BG line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to Command D to deselect, and I'm going to pull this shadow background layer behind the section background layer. Now, the next thing you do is you do filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And you can see with the Gaussian blur is it blurs the background layer, and because it's black, you'll see the black kind of seep through. This is a good way to make a shadow that, that encompasses the entire background. You can take the radius up to expand the shadow. And then, if you don't want it to be quite so dark, you can select the shadow layer and take your opacity down like that. So you can play with those settings. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my navigation layer here. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to create a new layer. We'll call this nav. And again, I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to command click the thumbnail of the header background, and then I'm going to choose my rectangular marquee tool, hold the option key down, and I'm just going to subtract from the header, and then I'm going to subtract again to about that far to the side. And then that's going to be this sort of fuchsia color. I'm going to color pick that here, so that is going to be this color right there. And I'm going to jump back into this and option delete to fill that selection again with that fuchsia color. Again, don't forget that because they're on all different layers, I can move and drag those around to wherever I need them to be. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to create my title. Just a little story, word about the title here. This is received in Google Fonts. This is called, if you select the title here, you'll see this is called Great Vibes. And the reason why I'm using a Google Fonts title here is because what I'm trying to do is get a really decorative font that's going to be web friendly, that will show up in the web. So I'm going to jump over to my browser real quick here, googlefonts.com, and you can do a search for any kind of font type. I did a handwriting search there, and that's where I found this one. It was called Great Vibes. Since I already know the name, I'm just going to type it in, Great Vibes. As you can see, there it is. When you find the font that you want, what you do is you click Add to Collection and then click Download. When you add it to the collection, you'll see this Download Font Families as a zip file. When it downloads, you'll see that it's here, and then for Mac, you just double click it and you'll get this dialog box that says Install Font. I've already had my font installed, so I'm not going to do that. Now, once you install the font, and we'll be seeing this later on in future tutorials, you'll see that you can also do this through your CSS, and that's why I'm working with a web-safe font or a Google font. But at this point, it's downloaded onto my system so that you can see this font. I can use this font for my layout.